Hello everybody, this is Chick Wilfong and I know Pancho Villa. My buddy Charles Williams keeps telling stories about cattle and about ropings, and I've got one that's a true story, but it's a pretty good one. Back right after Hurricane Katrina, I went to work in South Alabama for a man named Steve Scott. I was there because Chad Houck was buying and selling some cattle there, and he said they needed some help, so I went over to help him. And every Friday afternoon, if the cattle market was doing good and Mr. Scott was making lots of commission, he'd get on his four-wheeler and put him a great big old Monte Cristo cigar in, and he'd ride around big dogging it. And he was your typical Southeasterner in the cattle business. He you know, no matter what, the Texans were wrong and he was right, and I got pretty accustomed to it. But we were there one afternoon on Friday, and he had already got to chewing on his cigar and big dogging it around there, and up pulls this truckload of cattle. And this old black man gets out, walks back there and says, "Mr. Scott," said, "I'd like to sell you my yearlings off my cows." So that's not a problem. Let's take a look at them. He went back there and took a look at them. There's a whole trailer load, little old bumper pull trailer without the top on it. There's a whole trailer load, little old heifers and steers back there, weigh 225, 230. Fit right on some cattle we had going to, seemed like they was going to Bernie Rogers at the time, but they was going back into Mississippi. And so Mr. Scott, he leaned on there and he looked at them, and he has always prided himself on being a lot better trader than anybody else in the world, and he'd tell you that. And let's just say the cattle was worth $1 a pound at the time. He said, you know, all they're worth's about 65, 70 cents this week. Said, I guess I'd give 65 cents for them. That old man said, "You mean to tell me them cattle in there in my trailer ain't worth but 60 cents, 65 cents? He said, "Yeah." Said, "I'll give 65 for them." Said, "Hell, I got a whole pen of them in there, just same money." And that old man eased in there and he looked through them slats in them pens there in that old barn. And boy, them old pens just bulging, you know, just cattle, so full of cattle, they just bulging every which way. That old man looked in there and he said, "You mean to tell me, Mr. Scott, them cattle, just like my cattle, ain't worth but 65 cents a pound?" Mr. Scott says, "Yeah, that's exactly right." The old man peeked through there and said, "Well, Mr. Scott, I believe I'll take all of yours."